November 14th, 2024, 3:17 a.m. Ruby's Diner, South Boston. Elena Martinez had poured exactly 1,287 nights of coffee at this counter. The kind of counting that happened without thinking, the way soldiers counted days in country, or medics counted heartbeats under their fingertips. Tonight smelled like every other night. Colombian dark roast brewed at 2 a.m., bacon grease from the dinner rush 8 hours gone, and the sweet chemical tang of industrial cleaner on linoleum that had been mopped so many times the pattern had worn to ghosts. The neon sign outside buzzed its familiar rhythm, pink light washing through plate glass windows every 2.3 seconds. Elena had timed it once during a slow shift, though she couldn't remember why that number mattered. The vinyl booths held their permanent creases where bodies had sat for 40 years. 47 cracks spiderwebbed across the floor tiles. Elena knew them all without looking, the way you know scars on your own skin. Harold Patterson occupied booth 12 in the back corner. 72 years old, retired high school history teacher, always ordered decaf with cream and a slice of apple pie he never finished. He'd been coming here since before Elena started, maybe before she was born. Tonight he had the Boston Globe spread across the table, reading glasses perched on his nose, that particular stillness old men get when they're alone with their thoughts at 3 in the morning. Tommy Reeves worked the grill, 29 and playing hip-hop through tinny phone speakers propped against the industrial coffee maker. He murdered every lyric he attempted, tone-deaf but enthusiastic, the kind of kid who'd never seen anything worse than a bar fight and thought that made him street-smart. Elena had hired him 2 years ago when he showed up looking for work after his landscaping company went under. He was late most mornings, but he never complained, and he kept the kitchen cleaner than health code required. Vincent Romano sat in booth 7, always booth 7, every Thursday at 3:15 a.m. for the past 3 years, precise as liturgy. 45 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than Tommy made in a month. Dark hair going silver at the temples, the kind of face that photographs well at charity dinners and knows exactly how dangerous that is. He read the Wall Street Journal, drank his coffee black, and left a $50 tip on a $7 check. Elena had never asked what brought a man like Vincent Romano to a place like Ruby's at an hour like this. You learn not to ask questions about insomnia in a diner that never closed. Everyone here was running from something, or towards something, or just running. The reasons didn't matter. The coffee was always hot and nobody judged. She moved through her routine with the efficiency of muscle memory. Pour, refill, wipe, check. Her hands never shook. 3 years and she'd never spilled a drop, never needed to look at the cup to know when it hit full. The other waitresses, there used to be other waitresses, said it was weird how steady she was, like a surgeon, one of them said before she quit. Like someone who'd done more important things than serve coffee. Elena didn't correct her. Tommy's phone went silent mid-song. He glanced at it, frowned, shook it like that would fix whatever killed the signal. Then the overhead lights dimmed, just a fraction, the way they do when something big pulls power from the grid. The fluorescent hum changed pitch. Elena's hand stilled on the coffee pot. She learned to recognize that feeling in Fallujah, the moment before, when the air pressure changes and birds stop singing, and every animal instinct you've got starts screaming, but you can't hear it over the rational voice insisting everything's fine, just a technical glitch, just coincidence, just... Her phone sat in her apron pocket. She pulled it out. No signal. Not one bar. Not even searching for service. Just dead air where the network used to be. Military-grade jammer. The kind that cost 6 figures and required federal contracts or black market connections she didn't want to think about. She'd seen them in Iraq, mounted in Humvees rolling through Fallujah, creating bubbles of electromagnetic silence so insurgents couldn't trigger IEDs with cell phones. That tech shouldn't exist here. Shouldn't exist in South Boston at 3 in the morning, in a diner that barely broke even on weeknights. But she knew what it meant. Someone needed to isolate this location. Kill communications, make sure nobody inside could call for help and nobody outside could see what was about to happen. Elena set the coffee pot down on the warmer. Her movements stayed calm, routine, the waitress going through her closing duties, even though closing wasn't for 3 more hours. She wiped a counter that didn't need wiping, counted the seconds, estimated the range of the jammer, probably a vehicle outside, maybe 200 meters. Military specification likely had enough power to blanket a city block. 60 seconds passed. The homeless man who usually slept against the building across the street, Danny something, Vietnam vet with a shopping cart and a Red Sox cap. He was gone. Elena had seen him there when she arrived for her shift at 10 p.m. Now the spot sat empty. Sleeping bag and cart vanished like they'd never existed. Someone had cleared the area. She turned to Harold. He was still reading his paper, oblivious. Tommy started another song on his phone, didn't notice it was only playing from local storage, no streaming, no connection to the world outside this building. Vincent had noticed. Elena saw it in the way he held himself, not the casual lean of a man reading financial news, something tighter now, combat awareness bleeding through the civilian posture. His eyes weren't on the paper anymore. They tracked the windows, the door, the angles of approach. He knew. Whatever was coming, Vincent Romano knew, and he was calculating odds that didn't look good. The first 6 men entered at 3:19 a.m. They didn't walk, they moved. There's a difference. Civilians walk with destination and distraction, checking phones, talking, existing in their own bubbles. These men moved like water finding channels, flowing to positions with the kind of coordination that comes from training, or repetition, or both. 2 took the front entrance, flanking the door. 2 moved to the windows, standing where they could cover the dining room. 2 more positioned themselves near the emergency exit and back. None of them looked at menus. None of them looked for tables. They were mapping fields of fire. Elena counted their jackets. Heavy on the left side. That distinctive pull that comes from concealed carry, holsters at the ribs or shoulder, weapons substantial enough to create weight asymmetry. Not handguns, submachine guns maybe. Something that could put down a lot of rounds in a confined space. She picked up the coffee pot again, walked to Harold's booth, poured his refill with hands that didn't shake. Harold glanced up, smiled, that grandfatherly smile that made him look harmless and kind, and exactly the kind of man who had no idea 6 armed killers had just walked into his regular diner. "Quiet night, Elena." "They usually are, Harold." 8 more men entered. These ones fanned wider. Perimeter positions outside the windows, visible through glass as dark shapes against darker streets. Creating a cordon, sealing exits. Standard suppression formation. The kind used for hostage rescue or high-value target elimination, when you needed to ensure nobody escaped and nothing went wrong. Elena had seen it before. In Fallujah, in Ramadi, in every urban operation where American forces needed to lock down a building and control everyone inside. The geometry was textbook. Overlapping fields of fire, multiple redundancies, professional execution. Whoever planned this knew exactly what they were doing. Tom finally looked up from his grill, noticed the men. His face did that thing young people's faces do when violence enters their frame of reference for the first time. Confusion bleeding into fear, the slow realization that something isn't right, that danger exists in places that used to feel safe. He looked at Elena. She shook her head once, small movement, barely visible, the universal signal for stay calm, don't react, let this play out. Vincent hadn't moved. He sat in booth 7 with his newspaper and his coffee, but his spine was straight now, shoulders squared, the posture of a man who knows he's the target and has already accepted what comes next. His 2 bodyguards, Marcus and Tony, Elena knew their names from 3 years of Thursdays, had positioned themselves near the front door. They weren't subtle about it anymore. Hands inside jackets, eyes on the new arrivals, bodies coiled tight. Not that it mattered. 2 men with handguns against 14 men with automatic weapons and tactical positioning. The math wasn't even close. 16 more entered in the final wave. These were different. Younger, hungrier. The ones who actually pull triggers while the perimeter team contains and the entry team establishes position. The shooters. The killers. The men who get paid to make bodies stop moving and don't flinch at the sound of screaming. They filled the diner like water filling a glass. Every empty space suddenly occupied. Every angle suddenly covered. 30 men total. Elena counted them twice to be sure. 30 armed men surrounding one target. The last man through the door was older. 40, maybe 45. Expensive suit under an overcoat that probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. Dark hair slicked back, ice chip eyes the color of winter oceans, and a face that had seen too much violence to be impressed by more. He carried himself like authority, like a man who gives orders and knows they'll be followed, even when following them means dying. He turned and locked the door behind him. The deadbolt sliding home sounded impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Tommy's music had stopped. Harold had looked up from his paper. Even the neon sign outside seemed to have paused between flickers. Vincent set down his coffee cup. The porcelain touched wood with a soft click that carried across the room. Alexander Kozlov. Vincent's voice was steady, conversational, like greeting an old business partner at a convention. Didn't expect to see you in Boston. Vincent Romano. Kozlov's accent was thick, Russian vowels bending English words into different shapes. Or should I say Vincent Castellano? Your real name, yes? Before you stole it from your brother and pretended to die. Vincent's jaw tightened. Only tell Elena had ever seen. The micro-expression that meant something had landed. You've done your homework. 3 years of homework. 3 years tracking you. 3 years waiting for the right moment. Kozlov moved deeper into the diner, boots hitting linoleum with measured steps. You remember my brother, yes? Dmitry Kozlov? You killed him in Providence. Took $40 million from shipment he was protecting. Made him look weak before you made him dead. Your brother came to kill me. I defended myself. You executed him. 12 bullets. Left his body in a warehouse for rats to find. Kozlov stopped 10 feet from booth 7. Optimal range. Close enough for accuracy, far enough to avoid splatter. Professional distance. Tonight I return the favor. But first, you will give me what I came for. Vincent actually laughed. No humor in it, just the sound men make when they've already done the math and know how the story ends. Bank codes? Distribution networks? Names of politicians on my payroll? Let me guess. You want everything I built in exchange for a quick death instead of a slow one. Smart man. We can do this easy or we can do this hard. Your choice. But either way, Romano Empire ends tonight. Marcus and Tony went for their guns. They were fast, professional, well-trained. Elena saw the movement begin, saw their hands clearing holsters, saw the weapons coming up with practiced efficiency. They never had a chance. 4 different shooters fired. Suppressed weapons making sounds like wet coughs, subsonic rounds punching through flesh without the dramatic crack of normal gunfire. Marcus took 2 to the chest and 1 to the head. Tony got 3 center mass before he even finished drawing. They dropped like puppets with cut strings. Blood pooling fast on linoleum Elena had mopped 6 hours ago. Dead before their bodies finished falling. Harold gasped. The sound cut through Elena's combat assessment like a knife. She turned and saw him, one hand pressed to his chest, face going pale, breathing shallow and rapid. Cardiac event. Stress-induced. He was 72 years old, with a history she didn't know but could guess, and watching 2 men get executed 5 feet away was exactly the kind of shock that could stop a heart. She had maybe 8 minutes before irreversible damage. Elena moved without thinking. 3 steps to Harold's booth, dropping into the seat across from him, her hand finding his wrist to check his pulse. Fast. Thready. Wrong. Harold, look at me. Eyes on me. Breathe. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. You remember that? In through your nose, out through your mouth. Stay with me. Elena. His voice came out strangled. What's happening? Don't talk, just breathe. Your medication, is it in your car? He nodded, barely. Which pocket? Keys? Jacket, right side. Elena stood, turned to face Kozlov. 30 weapons tracked her movement. 30 men suddenly focused on the waitress who'd been invisible 10 seconds ago. She kept her hands visible, open, non-threatening, the universal body language of someone who desperately doesn't want to get shot. "Sir?" Her voice came out level, calm, the tone medics use in crisis situations, the one that says, "I'm not a threat, I'm help, let me do my job." "That man is having a heart attack. He's a civilian. He has nothing to do with whatever business you have here. I need to get his medication from his car, or he's going to die in the next 10 minutes. 2 minutes outside, then I'm back." He stays visible through the window the whole time. "You can send someone with me if you want, but he needs his nitro now." Kozlov studied her. Elena felt the weight of his assessment, saw him cataloging details. Age, early 30s. Build, fit but not threatening. Demeanor, civilian, scared but trying to help. Role, waitress, harmless, irrelevant to his objectives. He saw exactly what she needed him to see. "You have 90 seconds. He gestured to one of his men. "Sergey, accompany her. She tries anything, kill the old man first, then her." Sergey was young, maybe 25. Slavic features, dead eyes, the kind of face that had learned to stop feeling things a long time ago. He moved with the loose confidence of someone who'd killed before and knew he could kill again. Elena walked past him toward the door, heard his boots following, felt the weight of his weapon, probably a handgun, held low and ready at his side. They stepped outside into November cold, the air bit sharp after the diner's warmth. Harold's Buick sat 3 spaces down, dark blue, scratched paint, the kind of car old men drive until they die. Elena's hands found the keys in her apron, held them up so Sergey could see. No tricks, no sudden movements, just a waitress getting medication for a dying man. She walked to the car, put the key in the lock, turned it. "Where is medicine?" Sergey's English came out thick, impatient. "Glove box. Heart patients keep it close." She opened the door, leaned inside, reached for the glove compartment. Sergey made his first mistake. He moved closer, close enough to see what she was doing, close enough to make sure she wasn't pulling a weapon. Close enough. Elena's hand never reached the glove box. It found the release lever for the seat back instead. She pulled hard, felt the seat collapse backward, and rolled her weight with it in the same motion. Her left hand shot up and found Sergey's wrist, the one holding the gun, redirecting his aim toward the sky as her right elbow came around in a tight arc and connected with his trachea. The Marine Corps called it a close-quarters disarm and incapacitate. 4 seconds from start to finish when executed correctly. Elena had done it 1,000 times in training. Done it 3 times in country when insurgents got too close during medical evacuations. Sergey dropped like his strings were cut. Not dead, she hadn't hit hard enough for that, but his crushed windpipe meant he couldn't scream and couldn't breathe right and wouldn't be a threat for the 5 minutes it took to lose consciousness. Elena caught him, lowered him quietly behind the Buick where the angle meant nobody inside could see, took his weapon, Glock 19, full magazine, one in the chamber, tucked it into the back of her waistband under her uniform shirt, checked her watch. 40 seconds elapsed. She opened the glove box, found Harold's nitroglycerin pills in their amber bottle, closed the car door, walked back toward the diner at the same calm pace she'd left with. 87 seconds total. Inside, Kozlov had positioned himself at the optimal execution distance from Vincent. Professional, patient, waiting. Harold was still breathing, but his color was worse, lips going blue at the edges. Elena crossed to him, unscrewed the pill bottle, put 1 tablet under his tongue. "Under your tongue, Harold. Let it dissolve. Don't swallow." She watched his throat work, saw him force himself to follow instructions. Good. The nitro would dilate his blood vessels, ease the cardiac stress, buy him time. Kozlov hadn't looked at her. His attention was fixed on Vincent, on the main event, on the reason he'd brought 30 men to a South Boston diner at 3 in the morning. "Last chance, Romano. Bank codes, distribution networks, every name on your payroll. Give me everything, or I make this hurt." Vincent met his eyes. No fear there, Just that particular weariness men get when they've lived too long in the violence and know exactly how the story ends.
Then I guess we're going to be here a while.
Kozlov's hand moved to his weapon. Elena made a decision. The coffee pot on the warmer was still full, still boiling. She'd refilled it 40 minutes ago, and commercial warmers kept liquid at 190 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to burn, hot enough to blind, hot enough to create chaos. She'd spent 13 years running from Fallujah, 13 years hiding from the memory of Corporal Elena Martinez, combat medic, hotel company, 2nd Battalion. 13 years pretending she was just Elena, just a waitress, just someone ordinary who served coffee and cleared tables and didn't have blood on her hands. 13 years telling herself she was done with violence. But she'd taken an oath once, sworn words that still lived somewhere behind her ribs, where scars form over wounds that never quite heal. Words about protecting those who need protection, about coming to aid, about never abandoning the fight. Semper Fidelis didn't have an expiration date. Elena picked up the coffee pot. Harold was watching her now. Those old eyes that had seen things. She could tell that about him, always could. They tracked her movement with sudden understanding, recognition passing between them. The kind that happens when warriors see each other across decades and different wars, and the same eternal truth about who protects whom when the monsters come calling. He was whispering something, lips barely moving. She read them anyway. Semper Fi. Always faithful. Not to the core, not to the mission. To the people beside you when the shooting starts. Vincent saw it too. Saw Elena shift her weight, saw her grip change on the handle, saw the combat breathing she couldn't quite suppress. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. And something changed in his expression. Not hope exactly, but calculation. The math of survival suddenly including variables that hadn't existed 10 seconds ago. Kozlov raised his weapon. Elena threw. The coffee pot sailed through the air in a perfect arc. All those physics classes at Pendleton about trajectory and projectiles suddenly mattering. It hit the overhead fluorescent fixture dead center. Glass exploded. Boiling liquid sprayed. Sparks showered like brief fireworks. Then, darkness, complete and absolute. Elena was already moving before the scream started. 1,387 days walking this floor. Every table memorized, every chair, every crack in the linoleum. She knew this space better than she knew her own face in the mirror, better than she knew the scars on her hands from IV needles and shrapnel. In the darkness, Ruby's diner belonged to her. The closest gunman stood 5 feet to her left. She'd counted his position when he entered, tracked him with peripheral vision while she poured Harold's coffee, knew exactly where he'd be when the lights went out. She moved by sound and memory. Her hand found his weapon before he could pivot toward where she'd been standing. Quick twist, specific angle, pressure applied exactly where the 4th and 5th metacarpals meet the carpals. Human hands aren't designed to resist that kind of torque. Something broke with a wet snap. The gun clattered free. Elena caught it mid-fall. No hesitation, no thought. Just muscle memory from 1,000 hours on the range at Lejeune and another 1,000 treating gunshot wounds in desert hospitals. She fired twice, center mass. The muzzle flash lit his shocked face for a microsecond before he dropped. Chaos erupted. 30 men shouting in Russian and English, weapons discharging in random directions, bullets punching through vinyl booths and shattering what remained of the front windows. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, overwhelming, the kind of noise that makes thinking impossible and reduces everything to instinct and training. Vincent hit the floor, smart, stayed low, out of the horizontal plane where most of the rounds were flying. Tommy screamed from the kitchen, high-pitched, terrified, the sound of someone whose worst day just got worse. Elena dropped into a crouch and moved. 3 steps left, duck behind the industrial dishwasher, acquire second target. He was rotating right, standard tactical response to contact left, exactly where she knew he'd be. She swept his legs, let momentum and surprise do the work. As he fell, she drove her elbow into his throat, felt cartilage collapse. heard the wet gurgle that meant his trachea was compromised, and he had maybe 2 minutes before he suffocated. She wasn't waiting around to find out. Someone shouted in Russian. The words didn't matter, but the tone did. Command voice. Kozlov trying to restore order, regain control, coordinate a response. But coordination requires communication, and communication requires knowing where your enemy is. Elena was everywhere and nowhere. A ghost with a body count. She vaulted the counter, Tommy's counter, where he made eggs and bacon for insomniacs at 4 a.m., and dropped into a cluster of 3 men who'd grouped near the register, probably thinking it was defensible position, probably forgetting that clusters make targets. In the tangle of bodies that followed, Elena used every inch of close-quarters combat training the Marines had beaten into her at Quantico. Knee to groin, palm strike to nose, driving bone fragments toward brain. Wrist control, weapon strip, redirect their own gun into their own partner. She came out of it holding 2 more weapons. 5 down, 25 remaining. The math was shifting. Not in her favor, 25-1 was still suicide numbers, but away from certain death, toward possible, toward maybe. Red emergency lighting kicked on. Battery backup, dim crimson glow that turned everything into shadow theater and made depth perception nearly impossible. Elena could see shapes now, silhouettes, movement. So could they. Kozlov's voice cut through the pandemonium in Russian. She caught enough words to understand. Formation, rally point, control the perimeter. They were adapting, learning, recognizing that their numerical advantage meant nothing if they kept getting killed in 1s and 2s. Elena needed to change the equation again. The industrial fryer had been running since the dinner shift. 6 hours at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Oil hot enough to cook frozen French fries in 90 seconds. Hot enough to cause 3rd-degree burns on contact. She grabbed the handle, wrapped her hand in her apron first, heat-resistant fabric between skin and metal, and swung. Burning oil arced through the darkness like liquid fire. Droplets caught the emergency lighting, glowing red and gold, beautiful and terrible. 3 men screamed as it found skin. They dropped, clawing at their faces, no longer threats, no longer thinking about weapons or tactics or anything except making the burning stop. Elena disappeared back into shadow before their partners could return fire. Rounds sparked off the stainless steel where she'd been standing. Close. Too close. Harold was still under his table. She could see his shape in the red dimness. He'd pushed himself into the corner, making himself small. Survival instinct from some war she didn't know about yet. Tommy was crying in the walk-in freezer. She could hear him through the door, that distinctive sound of someone trying to be quiet while falling apart. Vincent had pulled himself behind booth 7. His breathing was steady, controlled, not panicking. The sound of someone who'd been in bad situations before and lived through them by keeping his head. Kozlov shouted again, different order this time. And then she heard it, the metallic click of night vision goggles being deployed. They'd brought equipment. Of course they had. This was a professional operation. 30 men didn't show up without contingencies for exactly this kind of scenario. 8 shapes moved through the red darkness, different now, more confident. Heads scanning in that distinctive side-to-side motion that meant electronic sight enhancement. They could see in the dark, see her. The advantage was gone. Elena moved before they locked onto her position, found the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall by the kitchen, industrial size, CO2-based. She yanked it free, pulled the pin, aimed low, and squeezed. White vapor exploded outward in a pressurized cloud. Carbon dioxide fog thick enough to blind normal vision and absolutely opaque to thermal imaging. Night vision goggles couldn't see through it. Nothing could. The fog rolled across the diner like ground-level weather. Men coughed, shouted, weapons fired blind, more glass shattered. In the whiteout chaos, Elena killed 2 more. Quick, efficient, brutal. A steak knife from the table settings, serrated edge, 6-inch blade, driven up under the ribs at a 45-degree angle toward the heart. Clinical. Textbook. The way they taught it at Quantico when you needed someone dead and couldn't afford to make noise. The first man died before he understood what happened. The second one grabbed her arm, strong, fighting back. She broke his nose with her forehead, swept his legs, drove the blade into his femoral artery on the way down. He had about 90 seconds before he bled out. She didn't stay to count them. The CO2 cloud was dissipating. Elena moved toward the kitchen, toward Tommy in his freezer prison, toward defensible space she could hold. But Kozlov was there, waiting in the doorway. No night vision goggles, just a handgun, and the kind of patience that comes from knowing your enemy has to come to you eventually. He fired 3 times. Elena felt the first round punch through her left shoulder. Hot, sharp, immediate. The kind of pain that comes with nerve damage and blood loss and questions about permanent function. She'd been shot before. To Crete, 2007. Sniper round through the meat of her thigh. She'd finished treating her patient, applied her own pressure bandage, then limped to the aid station. This was worse. Shoulder joint compromised meant her left arm was 40% functional at best. She could shoot right-handed, but reload would be slow. Close quarters combat was harder when you couldn't control an opponent's weapon hand. The math changed again. Not impossible yet, but closer. Elena dropped behind the counter. Let darkness swallow her. Put pressure on the wound with her right hand. Felt hot blood pulsing between her fingers. Through and through, probably. The fact that she could still move her fingers meant major nerves were intact. That was good. The fact that she was bleeding heavily meant the bullet had clipped something arterial. That was bad. She had maybe 40 minutes before blood loss became critical. Kozlov's voice cut through the darkness. Close. Too close.
Elena Martinez. Yes, I know your name.
I know many things. I know you were Marine Corps. I know you served in Fallujah. I know you disappeared 13 years ago after something went wrong in Iraq. Something you're still running from. Elena's breath caught. Not from pain, from recognition. He knew. Somehow he knew.
Come out,
Kozlov continued, conversational, like they were discussing weather over coffee.
I'm not here for you. I'm here for Romano. Help me or stay out of the way. But stop this now before more people die.
In the red dimness, Elena counted bodies. 9 down, 21 standing. Vincent alive but trapped. Harold alive but terrified. Tommy alive but broken. She thought about Fallujah, about Sergeant Davis bleeding out from a sucking chest wound, about Private Chen with his femoral artery spraying red across sand, about Lance Corporal Jackson, 19 years old, head trauma, dying while Elena chose to save someone else first, about the math of triage, the calculation that says you can't save everyone, so you save who you can and carry the rest forever. About the oath she took when she was 19 and stupid and thought she could make a difference. About 13 years of hiding. About 40 minutes of blood loss. About whether staying invisible was worth the cost. Elena stood up. The red emergency lighting painted Kozlov's face in shades of old blood. He hadn't moved from the kitchen doorway, weapon steady, eyes tracking Elena's silhouette as she rose from behind the counter. 21 men remained standing in the shattered diner, their shapes scattered across booth wreckage and broken glass. Elena kept her right hand pressed against her shoulder wound. Her left arm hung useless, fingers barely responding to commands. Blood soaked through her uniform shirt, warm and sticky, spreading down to her elbow. Smart choice. Kozlov lowered his weapon slightly, not holstering it, just acknowledging détente. You're bleeding badly. Sit down before you fall down. My business is with Romano, not with brave waitresses playing soldier. I'm not playing. Elena's voice came out steady, despite the pain radiating through her shoulder joint. And I'm a Marine, not a soldier. There's a difference.
Yes, I know difference. Marines are the ones who think dying for strangers makes them heroes.
Kozlov gestured to his men. Half of them trained weapons on Elena. The other half kept Vincent pinned behind booth 7. But you don't have to die tonight. Walk away. Take old man, take crying cook, walk outdoor. I let you go. I even let you keep breathing. Elena looked past him toward the freezer. Tommy's sobbing had quieted to occasional hitches of breath, probably in shock. Harold remained under his table, face pale but color improving since the nitro kicked in. Still alive, still waiting. Vincent caught her eye across the devastation. His expression held no hope, no expectation of rescue, just a kind of grim acceptance. The look men get when they've made their peace and are waiting for the bill to come due. But underneath that acceptance, Elena saw calculation, saw him measuring the same angle she was measuring, counting the same odds, running the same combat mathematics that never quite added up to survival. Here's what I know about you, Alexander Kozlov. Elena straightened, despite the blood loss making her vision swim at the edges. You brought 30 men to kill one target. Professional suppression formation, military-grade communications jamming, night vision equipment. This isn't revenge. This is a statement operation. Kozlov's eyes narrowed, interested despite himself. Your brother died 3 years ago. Long time to wait for payback. Long time to plan. Long time to spend money on equipment and personnel. Elena took a step forward, slow, non-threatening, reading his micro-expressions the way medics learn to read patients in triage. Which means this isn't about Dmitri at all. This is about proving Russian Bratva can take down Italian mob in their own territory. About showing weakness. About taking Romano's network for yourself. Very smart for a waitress. I told you, I'm not a waitress. Another step, closing distance. I'm the person who just killed 9 of your men in 15 minutes, in the dark, while wounded, with kitchen equipment and improvisation. The remaining Bratva soldiers shifted, weapons came up, fingers tightened on triggers. Kozlov raised his hand, the universal signal for hold fire. His attention fully on Elena now, reassessing, recalculating his own math. What are you proposing? You want Romano to give up bank codes, distribution networks, political contacts, information he spent 20 years building, information that dies with him if you put a bullet in his head before he talks. Elena gestured toward Vincent with her good hand. But he won't talk. Men like him don't. You could torture him for hours and all you'd get is silence and stubbornness and maybe a few names of people already dead. So you've got a problem. Clock is running. Boston PD does patrol this area eventually. Your jammer won't hide gunfire forever. 9 dead men means massive police response when they're found. You need information fast, or you need to cut losses and disappear. Kozlov studied her. The kind of look predators give other predators when trying to decide if they're facing competition or dinner. You're offering something. What? Let the civilians go. Harold, Tommy, the 2 truckers you've got zip-tied in booth 3. They're not part of this. They're witnesses who've seen too much, which means you'll have to kill them to ensure security. That's 4 more bodies. 4 more complications. 4 more chances something goes wrong when police start investigating. And in exchange? Elena felt Vincent's eyes on her, felt Harold watching from under his table, felt the weight of what she was about to say, pressing down like humidity before storms. In exchange, I help you get what you want from Romano. I'm a medic. I know how to cause pain without causing death. I know which nerves to hit, which bones to break, how to keep someone conscious and talking through trauma that should make them pass out. The lies came easier than truth. Had to. Kozlov needed to believe she was willing. Marines taught me things that aren't in textbooks, things we used on high-value targets in Fallujah when time was short and need was great. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Not betrayal exactly, more like understanding. Recognition that Elena was playing a deeper game, buying time or position or something he couldn't quite see yet. Kozlov considered. Elena counted heartbeats, her own pulse hammering in her ears. Blood loss making everything slightly distant, like watching the world through old glass. Why would you do this? Help me torture a man. Because I'm a survivor, Mr. Kozlov. I survived Fallujah when my entire unit didn't. I survived 13 years hiding from people who wanted me dead. I'll survive tonight by making the smart choice instead of the brave one. Elena let exhaustion creep into her voice. Easy to fake when most of it was real. I'm tired of running. Tired of being hunted. You let the innocents walk, give me $10,000 cash, and I'll make Romano sing every secret he's got. Then I disappear and you never see me again. The silence stretched. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed in the distance. Not coming here. Not yet. But a reminder that time was currency neither of them could afford to waste. Show me. Kozlov gestured toward Vincent. Show me what you can do. Make him scream. Then we have deal. Elena walked toward booth 7, each step careful, controlled. Her left arm dangling useless, right hand pressed against the wound to slow bleeding. She looked like exactly what she was claiming to be, someone broken enough to compromise, desperate enough to hurt others for survival. Vincent watched her approach. No fear in his face, just that steady gaze, waiting to see what card she'd play. Elena knelt beside him, close enough to whisper, close enough that her body blocked Kozlov's view of her hands. Trust me. Her lips barely moved. 4 minutes. Get ready to move. Vincent's eyes widened fractionally, understanding passing between them faster than words. He gave the smallest nod, agreement, commitment, all in on whatever insane plan she was building from blood loss and desperation. Elena stood, turned to face Kozlov. I need light, can't work in the dark, and I need my medical kit from behind the counter. Bandages, trauma shears, hemostats, the tools make the technique work. Kozlov barked orders in Russian. 2 of his men pulled tactical flashlights, high lumen beams cutting through the red dimness like searchlights. Another moved to the counter, rummaging until he found Elena's personal first aid kit. The one she'd carried since Iraq, battered and blood-stained, and full of supplies she'd replaced 100 times. He brought it to her, suspicious, watching her hands. Elena opened it, let him see the contents. Gauze, tape, scissors, hemostats, tourniquets, medical supplies. Nothing that looked like a weapon, unless you knew how weapons could be improvised from anything. She selected the trauma shears. 6-inch surgical scissors, with blunt tips designed to cut through clothing, bandages, seatbelts, heavy enough to have weight, sharp enough to cut skin if you tried. Hold his arm out. She gestured to Vincent's right arm. Palm up. I need access to the radial nerve. 2 of Kozlov's men grabbed Vincent, forced his arm extended. He didn't resist, played his role perfectly, the condemned man accepting his fate. Elena positioned the shears against Vincent's inner forearm, the spot where radial nerve runs close to surface, where pressure creates electric agony shooting from wrist to shoulder. This is going to hurt. A lot. The pain will make you want to talk. Makes everyone talk eventually. She met Vincent's eyes, saw him steel himself. But the trick is, I can keep you conscious through it. Keep the pain at levels that don't cause shock or unconsciousness. Hours if necessary. She pressed the blunt tip against his nerve, not cutting, just pressure. Precise application of force to tissue, designed to interpret pressure as damage. Vincent's jaw clenched, breath hissed through his teeth. His body went rigid, fighting the involuntary response, the animal instinct to pull away from source of pain. See, already he's struggling, and I haven't even started yet. Elena looked at Kozlov. But this takes time. Proper technique means building pain gradually, breaking him down piece by piece until his brain prioritizes stopping the hurt over protecting secrets. How long? 20 minutes minimum, maybe 30. Depends on his pain tolerance and how stubborn he is. Elena kept her voice clinical, detached, the way doctors talk about procedures instead of people. But I guarantee results. He'll tell you everything. Kozlov checked his watch, frowned, calculation visible on his face. Time pressure versus information value. Dead men in the diner versus police response time. The mathematics of criminal operations where every minute increased risk exponentially. You have 10 minutes. Make him scream or I shoot you both and burn this place down. Elena nodded, released Vincent's arm. The men holding him let go, stepped back, weapons still trained but attention slightly divided between watching her work and watching the darkness beyond the flashlight beams. That divided attention was everything. Elena knelt beside Vincent again, opened her medical kit wider, pretended to search for something. Her fingers found the scalpel she'd hidden under the gauze layers. Disposable surgical blade, number 15. Curved tip designed for precision cutting in tight spaces. I'm going to make you scream now. Her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Don't try to be brave. Nobody judges you for breaking under this. She pressed the scalpel against Vincent's forearm, drew blood. A shallow cut, superficial, wouldn't hit anything vital but looked dramatic in the harsh flashlight beams. Vincent screamed. It was perfect, agonized, convincing. The sound of a man discovering that everyone has a breaking point and pain finds it faster than threats ever could. Kozlov smiled, satisfied. Turning toward his men with something that looked like victory, already counting the money he'd extract from Romano's accounts. Elena moved. The scalpel left her hand in a throw she'd practiced 10,000 times with larger blades in Iraq. Different tool, same principle. Identify target, calculate distance, release with rotation for penetration. The blade buried itself in the throat of the nearest guard. Not deep enough to kill instantly, but deep enough to compromise his airway. Deep enough to make noise impossible. Deep enough that he dropped his weapon and grabbed his neck with both hands. Elena was already diving for that weapon before he hit the ground. The MP5 submachine gun was heavier than she expected, longer than the carbines she'd trained on, but the mechanics were similar enough. Magazine check, full, safety off. Selector to 3-round burst. She fired from the floor. 3 rounds into the second guard, center mass, he folded. 3 more into the flashlight holder on the left. The light exploded, darkness rushing back. The remaining flashlight swung toward her. Elena rolled. 3 rounds tracked her previous position, sparks flying from concrete where bullets hit. Vincent grabbed the dying guard's weapon, came up shooting. Not trained like Elena, but competent enough. Suppressive fire forcing Kozlov's men to take cover, buying seconds. "Kitchen!" Elena shouted. "Tommy! Harold! Move now!" She laid down covering fire as shapes scrambled in the red emergency lighting. Harold pulling himself from under the table, moving surprisingly fast for 72. Tommy bursting from the freezer, eyes wild, following Harold toward the back exit. Kozlov screamed orders. His remaining 16 men responded with professional precision, falling back to defensive positions, creating crossfire zones, turning the diner into a kill box. Elena and Vincent retreated toward the kitchen, moving backward, weapons up, firing in controlled bursts to keep heads down. A shape appeared in peripheral vision. Elena swung, fired, miss. The shooter dove behind an overturned table. Return fire chewed through the kitchen doorframe, wood splinters and drywall dust exploding. Elena felt something hot kiss her cheek, probably a fragment, drawing blood but not penetrating. They made it to the kitchen. Vincent slammed the door, industrial steel, designed to contain fires. Wouldn't stop bullets but would slow them, by minutes. "Freezer!" Elena gasped, blood loss catching up, vision swimming. "Get them in the freezer!" Industrial insulation, safest place. Vincent grabbed Harold and Tommy, shoved them toward the walk-in. The old man and the kid stumbled inside. Safe for now. Hidden. "How many rounds?" Vincent's breath came hard. Not from exertion, from adrenaline crash. The shakes that come after near death when your body realizes how close you came. Elena checked her weapon. Half magazine, maybe 15 rounds. You? Same, maybe less. He looked at her shoulder. "You're still bleeding." "I know." Elena leaned against the prep counter, spots dancing at the edges of her vision. Blood loss. Shock. The body's way of saying it's been pushed past reasonable limits and needs to shut down for repairs. But they didn't have time for repairs. The kitchen door shuddered, Kozlov's men testing it, probing for weakness. They'd breach in under a minute once they committed. "There's no other way out." Vincent checked windows. Too small. security bars. We're trapped. Elena's mind raced through tactical options, all of them bad. They couldn't hold the kitchen indefinitely, couldn't fight 16 men with 30 rounds between them, couldn't escape through blocked exits. But they didn't need to win. They just needed to survive until help arrived. What time is it? Vincent checked his watch. 3:57. Boston PD runs patrol past here at 4. 3 minutes. If we can make enough noise, draw attention. The door exploded inward. Breaching charge. Small. Controlled. Exactly enough explosive to compromise the lock without bringing down the wall. Smoke poured through the opening. Kozlov's men advanced behind it, using the cover, moving with tactical discipline. Elena fired through the smoke, blind, hoping. 3 round bursts into the gray cloud, tracking horizontal at chest height where humans keep their vital organs. Someone screamed. Someone else shouted in Russian. Vincent fired from different angle, creating crossfire, making them think about multiple threats. But crossfire required ammunition, and their magazines were draining fast. Each burst meant 3 fewer chances. Each miss meant seconds closer to empty chambers and desperate hand-to-hand against overwhelming numbers. The smoke cleared. 4 men down, 12 advancing. Elena dropped her empty magazine, reached for a fresh one, found nothing. She'd grabbed the weapon without checking for spare mags. Stupid. Fatal. "I'm out!" She threw the useless MP5 aside, drew the Glock she'd taken from Sergei. 17 rounds. Not enough, but better than nothing. Vincent kept firing, methodical, controlled, making each burst count, but his weapon clicked empty after the next trigger pull. 12 men, 0 automatic weapons, 1 handgun with 17 rounds. The math had finally caught up. Kozlov walked through the doorway, calm, unhurried, a man who'd already won and knew it. His weapon pointed at Elena. His expression held no anger, just professional assessment, a problem being solved. "Clever trap, using Romano as bait, making me think you would break him." Kozlov shook his head, disappointed but not surprised. "But now you're out of tricks, and out of bullets, and out of time." Elena raised the Glock. Kozlov had 12 men with clear shots. She had 17 rounds and a shoulder that screamed every time she moved her arm. "Maybe I take you instead." Kozlov continued, conversational. "Maybe you have information worth extracting. Where did Marine Medic learn to fight like Spetsnaz? Where did you get training that let you kill 9 of my men? What happened in Fallujah that made you disappear?" Elena's finger tightened on the trigger. Center mass, clean shot. But the moment she fired, 12 weapons would return the favor and she'd be dead before Kozlov hit the ground. Acceptable trade? Maybe, if it bought Vincent time. If Harold and Tommy stayed hidden in the freezer. If someone found them before they froze or suffocated. If. The word soldiers learned to hate. The variable that turns good plans into disaster. "Last chance." Kozlov raised his own weapon. "Drop gun, on your knees. Make this easy or make this hard. Your choice." Vincent stepped between them. "Shoot me instead." His voice carried across the kitchen. Steady. Certain. "You came for me. Here I am. Let her go. Let the others go. Take your information, take your revenge, take whatever you need, but let them go." "Vincent," Elena started. "No." He didn't look at her, kept his eyes on Kozlov. "You know what I did. You know what I am. 20 years running Boston's underworld. 20 years of violence and corruption and blood money. I earned this. They didn't. So let's settle it. You and me. Honor. The old way." Kozlov laughed, no humor in it, just recognition of a man trying to manipulate his own execution. "There is no honor among thieves, Romano. No old ways, just business." He gestured to his men. "Take them both, alive if possible. Dead works too." The kitchen exploded into motion. Elena fired. 3 rounds, 3 hits, 3 men falling. Vincent grabbed a kitchen knife, charged the nearest shooter, got shot twice in the chest before he made contact. He went down hard, blood spreading fast across his expensive suit. Elena screamed, rage and grief and 13 years of survivor's guilt crystallizing into pure violence. She emptied the Glock into the mass of advancing men. No aiming, no technique, just fury translated to muzzle flash and recoil. The slide locked back, empty. She threw the weapon at someone's face, heard bone crack, didn't care who or how badly. A rifle butt caught her in the ribs. She felt something crack, went down, gasping. Hands grabbed her, lifted her, slammed her against the prep counter hard enough to make stars burst across her vision. Kozlov appeared above her, his face still calm, still professional. The kind of man who'd seen too much violence to get emotional about more. "You should have taken the deal." He pressed his weapon against her forehead. Cold metal, heavy, final. "You should have walked away when you had the chance." Outside, sirens wailed. Closer now, multiple units. The distinctive whoop of Boston PD converging on a location with reports of gunfire. Kozlov heard it, frowned, checked his watch. 4:02. Time's up. He pulled the trigger. Click, empty chamber. He'd fired too many rounds, hadn't reloaded. That single instant of oversight, that millisecond of mechanical failure. Elena drove her knee into his groin, drove her forehead into his nose, drove her fist into his already broken ribs as he bent forward. He dropped. She didn't. Some reserve of adrenaline and stubbornness keeping her upright when she should be unconscious. The remaining Bratva soldiers hesitated, leader down, police approaching, mission compromised, every instinct screaming to abort and extract. 3 of them ran, chose survival over completion. The rest stood their ground, professional to the end, waiting for orders from a man who couldn't speak through broken nose and crushed testicles. Elena staggered to where Vincent lay. Too much blood, too much damage. She pressed her hand against the wounds, felt hot arterial flow between her fingers, knew it was too late but tried anyway because stopping meant accepting, and accepting meant he'd die. "Vincent, stay with me. Pressure on the wounds. Breathe. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. Stay focused." His eyes found hers, clear despite the blood loss, present despite the dying. "You tried." His voice came out wet, bubbling, lung compromised. "More than I deserved. More than anyone's tried in 20 years. Don't talk. Save your strength." "For what? I'm done, Elena. We both know it." He coughed, blood on his lips. "But you got the others out. Harold, Tommy. That counts for something. That counts for everything." The sirens were right outside now, squealing brakes, car doors slamming, the chaos of first responders arriving at an active shooter scene with incomplete information and maximum danger. Kozlov's remaining men looked at each other, calculation visible. Stay and fight cops, or retreat and live? The math was simple. They ran. All except Kozlov. He pulled himself upright, weapon in hand, reloaded now, aimed at Vincent's head. "If I can't have your secrets, nobody can." Elena launched herself between them. Stupid, desperate. The kind of choice medics make when training says, "Let them die," and humanity says the opposite. The bullet meant for Vincent hit Elena instead. She felt it punch through her abdomen, felt the burning track as it transited soft tissue, felt the exit wound blow out her back. Then she felt nothing at all. The kitchen door crashed open, Boston PD SWAT, tactical teams flooding the space with weapons drawn and commands shouted, and Kozlov dropping his gun and raising his hands because even Russian Bratva knew better than to shoot American cops. Someone caught Elena before she hit the floor. Strong arms, tactical vest pressing against her back, radio chatter and urgent voices, and the surreal disconnect of consciousness fading while the world continued without her. She heard Vincent coughing, still alive, kept alive by her body blocking the shot meant to finish him. She heard Harold's voice from the freezer. "The waitress! Help the waitress! She saved us all!" She heard medics arriving, felt hands checking her wounds, felt the sharp sting of IV placement, felt herself being lifted onto a stretcher. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was the kitchen ceiling. Stained white tiles, water damage in the corner, the kind of mundane detail that shouldn't matter but somehow felt important to memorize. In Fallujah, Lance Corporal Jackson had stared at the ceiling while he died. Elena remembered thinking that at least his last view was sky, not concrete. Now she understood. When the end comes, you look at what's above, because what's below is too terrible to face. The darkness came softly, like falling asleep, like letting go, like 13 years of running finally, mercifully ending. Somewhere far away, someone was saying her name, shouting it, begging her to stay awake, stay present, stay alive. But Elena was so tired, and the darkness was so inviting. And maybe, after everything, maybe she'd earned the right to rest. Elena woke to the mechanical rhythm of a ventilator breathing for her. Tubes ran into her arms, her chest, places she couldn't see, but could feel as foreign pressure against skin. The ceiling above held acoustic tiles and fluorescent panels. Hospital. ICU, by the equipment density and the hushed urgency of voices beyond the curtain. Her mouth tasted like blood and plastic. Her throat burned where the endotracheal tube scraped tissue with each mechanical breath. She tried to move her hands, found restraints holding them down. Soft restraints, medical, not criminal, to keep confused patients from pulling out the machinery keeping them alive. A nurse appeared, young, competent. She checked monitors, made notes, noticed Elena's eyes tracking movement. "You're awake. Good. Don't try to talk. The tube makes that impossible. I'm going to get the doctor." She pressed a call button. "You've been unconscious for 36 hours. Boston Medical Center. You're safe." Safe. The word felt foreign. Elena's last memory was darkness and Vincent's blood, and the certainty that she was dying, in a kitchen that smelled like fryer oil and gunpowder. But here she was, breathing, existing, apparently not dead despite excellent reasons to be. The doctor arrived within minutes, older man, surgical scrubs, the kind of weathered competence that comes from too many trauma cases and not enough sleep. "Ms. Martinez, I'm Dr. Keating. You've sustained significant injuries. Gunshot wounds to your left shoulder and lower abdomen. The shoulder round was through and through, missed major vessels, but caused nerve damage we'll need to assess later. The abdominal wound was more serious. Bullet transited your ascending colon, nicked your inferior vena cava. We've done 2 surgeries. You've received 6 units of blood. You're stable now, but you're going to be here a while." Elena blinked. The universal patient signal for, "I understand, tell me more." "There are police outside who want to talk to you. FBI as well. Something about a shootout at a diner. 23 dead? You're the only survivor from inside besides an older gentleman and a young man who ran. They're calling you a hero, saying you saved lives." Dr. Keating checked her IV lines. "Normally, I'd make them wait until you're extubated and stable. But there's someone who's been here since you arrived. He's quite insistent. Says his name is Harold Patterson, and he taught you in school. Which I know isn't true, but he won't leave." Elena's chest tightened. Harold. Alive. That counted for something. That counted for everything. "I'm going to extubate you now. Going to hurt. Try not to fight it. On 3. 1, 2. He pulled the tube on 2. Elena gagged, coughed, felt her abdomen explode with pain as surgical incisions protested the movement. Tears streamed down her face. Not from emotion, just the body's response to trauma and violation, and oxygen suddenly available without mechanical assistance. Her first breath came in as a ragged gasp. Her first word came out as a croak. "Vincent." Dr. Keating's expression shifted. The microtel doctors learned to suppress but never quite eliminate when delivering bad news. "Vincent Romano. He's alive. Barely. 2 gunshots to the chest. 1 collapsed lung, 1 nicked his subclavian artery. He coded twice in the OR. We've got him in an induced coma while his body stabilizes." The doctor paused. "He shouldn't have survived. The only reason he did was because someone kept pressure on his wounds until paramedics arrived. someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Elena closed her eyes, felt relief and guilt warring in her chest. Relief that Vincent lived, guilt that she'd failed to protect him better, faster, sooner. "Can I see Harold?" "5 minutes, then you rest. Doctor's orders." Harold shuffled in like a man who'd aged a decade in a day and a half. His clothes were different from the diner. Clean pants and shirt, probably borrowed from hospital donations. His face carried new lines, deeper shadows, the aftermath of witnessing violence that couldn't be unseen. But his eyes were clear, present, the eyes of someone who'd processed trauma before and knew how to keep functioning despite it. He pulled a chair to her bedside, sat heavily. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I lied to you." Harold's voice came out rough, unused. "At the diner, all those years. I said I was at Iwo Jima. I was, but I wasn't just there. I was a corpsman, Navy, attached to the Marines, 3rd Medical Battalion." Elena stared, the pieces falling into place, the way he'd read her movements that night, the way he'd understood what she was doing before she did it, the way he'd mouthed Semper Fi in the darkness. February 19th, 1945. We hit the beach at 0900. I was 19 years old, carried morphine and bandages and prayers that didn't work often enough. Harold's hands shook. Age or memory, impossible to separate. 36 days on that island. I treated 647 wounded, lost 209, knew every name, still know them, still see their faces when I sleep. "Harold," "Let me finish. I've carried this 60 years. Another few minutes won't kill me." He leaned forward. "After the war, I taught history. Married, had kids, lived a normal life. But I could never talk about the island, could never explain to people who weren't there what it means to choose. Who gets morphine when you only have 3 syrettes left? Who gets evacuated when the LVT only holds 4 and you've got 9 critical? Who lives and who dies because you made a decision in 3 seconds that they'll never know about?" Elena's throat constricted, tears running now, not from pain, from recognition, from someone finally, mercifully understanding. "I watched you that night, watched you count them, calculate angles, run the triage in your head before the first shot was fired." Harold took her hand, careful of the IV line. "You didn't hesitate, didn't freeze. You chose to fight for people you barely knew because that's what the oath means. Not protect everyone, protect those you can reach, those worth reaching for." "I failed in Fallujah. My whole team." "You survived Fallujah. That's not failure. That's the burden." Harold squeezed her hand. "The dead don't carry guilt. The living do. We carry them. Every one, every face, every choice. That's the price of the oath. It doesn't expire. It doesn't forgive. It just demands we keep trying." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Time's up" expression. Harold nodded, started to stand. Elena held his hand tighter. "What happened to Tommy?" "He's fine. Traumatized, but fine. Stayed with me at the station while police took statements. Kid can't stop talking about you, calling you Captain America. I told him that's Army. You're Marines. Very different thing. He didn't care." Harold smiled, tired but genuine. "He wants to visit, when you're ready." "And Kozlov?" "Federal custody. FBI grab jurisdiction. 23 counts of murder. Attempted murder of you, Vincent, me, Tommy, racketeering, arms trafficking. They found his whole operation when they traced the jammer equipment. He's not seeing daylight for 3 consecutive life sentences." Elena closed her eyes. Justice. Messy and incomplete, but justice nonetheless. Harold leaned down, kissed her forehead. The gesture grandfatherly and sacred and freighted with meaning that didn't need words. "You saved my life, Elena. But more than that, you reminded me why I took the oath, why it mattered then and matters now. Thank you." He left before she could respond, before she could tell him that he'd saved her too. Saved her from 13 years of believing she was broken, believing the oath was something she'd failed instead of something she'd kept. The dead don't carry guilt, the living do. Maybe that was enough. Maybe carrying them was how you honored them. Maybe survival wasn't failure. Maybe it was the hardest victory of all. Elena slept. Time became elastic in the ICU. Hours blurred. Day and night meant nothing when fluorescent lights never changed and alarms beeped at random intervals, and consciousness swam in and out on waves of morphine and pain. She had visitors, Boston PD detectives taking her statement, FBI agents asking about Bratva operations, a Marine Corps representative who showed up in dress blues and thanked her for her service and said the commandant himself sent commendations. Elena answered their questions, gave them facts, timelines, descriptions, everything except the truth about why she'd disappeared 13 years ago. That belonged to her. That stayed buried with Jackson and Chen and the others in Fallujah. On day 3, they moved her to a regular room. No more ICU, no more constant monitoring. Just a bed and a window and the slow, grinding work of healing. Vincent was transferred to the same floor that afternoon, still in induced coma, but stable enough to be out of critical care. Elena asked to see him. The nurses wheeled her down the hall in a chair, ivy pole rattling beside her. His room was larger than hers, private, the kind money bought even in public hospitals when you knew which palms to grease. He lay motionless under white sheets, ventilator breathing for him, monitors tracking vitals that climbed and fell with mechanical precision. Elena sat beside his bed, studied his face, peaceful in unconsciousness, no sign of the violence that had put him here, no indication of the 20 years he'd spent running Boston's underworld. "They say you're going to make it." Her voice was still rough from the endotracheal tube. "Going to wake up in a few days. Going to have to answer for a lot of things. 20 years of crime, murder, racketeering. The FBI found your records, your contacts. Everything Kozlov wanted, they got from your computers." Vincent didn't respond. Couldn't. But Elena talked anyway. "You tried to save me, stepped between me and Kozlov's gun. Offered yourself in trade. That counts. I don't know if it balances the scales. Don't know if anything balances 20 years of violence. But it counts." She reached out, touched his hand, still warm, still alive. "I'm going to testify, going to tell them what happened, how you fought beside me, how you protected civilians, how you tried to surrender yourself to save others. I can't erase your past, can't change what you did, but I can tell the truth about who you were when it mattered most." Outside, Boston sprawled under autumn sun. Traffic and construction and the endless motion of a city that didn't stop for tragedy. Somewhere out there, Ruby's diner sat empty. Crime scene tape and broken windows and bloodstains that wouldn't wash out. Elena wondered if it would ever open again, if anyone would want coffee in a place where 23 people died, if memory could be scrubbed with bleach and paint, or if violence stained deeper than surfaces. On day 5, a woman appeared in her doorway, mid-20s, professional pantsuit, FBI credentials in hand, Asian features that carried something familiar Elena couldn't quite place. "Ms. Martinez, I'm Special Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. I need to speak with you about Operation Nightfall." The name hit like a fist. Operation Nightfall. The classified designation for the Fallujah mission that went wrong, the one that killed her team. The one she'd spent 13 years running from. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Fallujah, 2006. Extraction of Dr. Hassan Petrov. Your team was ambushed. 6 killed. You survived. You went dark. You've been off-grid ever since." Agent Chen sat in the visitor's chair. "I know because my father was on your team. Private First Class Jonathan Chen. You saved his life." Elena's world tilted. Chen, the kid with the femoral bleed, the one she'd chosen over Jackson, the one who lived because someone else died. "Your father died last year. Cancer. But he had 17 years he wouldn't have had otherwise. 17 years because you clamped his artery and kept pressure until the medevac arrived. 17 years to come home, to raise me, to become a doctor and save other people's kids. Agent Chen pulled an envelope from her jacket. He wrote this before he died. Made me promise to find you, to give it to you. Elena took the envelope. Her hands shook. She couldn't open it, couldn't face whatever words lived inside. He never blamed you, never once. He said you made an impossible choice and lived with the consequences so the rest of us didn't have to. He said that's what corpsmen do, what Marines do, what heroes do when nobody's watching and everyone's dying and the math never adds up to enough. I'm not a hero. My father would disagree. So would Harold Patterson. So would Vincent Romano. So would Tommy Reeves. So would the 2 truckers in Booth 3 who got to go home to their families because you fought when you could have run. Agent Chen stood. The Bureau's closing the Operation Nightfall investigation, classified for national security reasons but effectively buried. You're clear. No charges, no questions. You can stop running. She left the envelope on the bedside table, left Elena staring at handwriting she remembered from casualty reports and personnel files. Chen's handwriting. Shaky from chemo, but still legible. Elena opened it an hour later when the morphine wore off enough for her to handle emotions without sedation. Doc Martinez, you gave me 17 years I didn't earn. 17 years I shouldn't have had. I watched you choose me over Jackson in Fallujah. Saw you make the calculation. Saw the guilt land before the bullet did. I need you to know. You chose right. Jackson's femoral was severed. Even if you'd reached him first, he was gone in 90 seconds. The math was mercy, not murder. You saved who could be saved. That's the oath. That's all it ever asks. I went home, became a doctor, raised Sarah, taught her your strength. Taught her that courage isn't fearless action, it's terrified action. It's doing the right thing when every instinct screams run. I'm dying now. Cancer. Fitting, maybe. The cells that survived Fallujah finally turning on themselves. But I'm not afraid. I've had time. Time you gave me. Time to matter. Time to leave something behind worth remembering. Don't waste your years feeling guilty. Don't let survivor's burden become survivor's prison. You gave me life, now live yours. The oath never expires, but neither does permission to heal. Semper Fi, Jonathan Chen PFC, USMC. Elena read it twice, 3 times. Committed it to memory the way she'd committed casualty counts and tactical formations and the faces of the dead. Then she cried, deep, wrenching sobs that tore at surgical incisions and made nurses rush in with concern. But she waved them away. Needed this. Needed to let 13 years of pressure escape through salt water and sound. Jackson had died. Chen had lived. Both were true. Both mattered. But only one was her fault, and it wasn't the one she'd been carrying. The oath never expires, but neither does permission to heal. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe healing was the mission now. Maybe the way you honored the dead was by living well enough for all of them. Elena slept that night without morphine, without dreams. The first real rest in 13 years. 6 months passed in a blur of surgery and physical therapy and the slow bureaucratic machinery of justice grinding forward. Kozlov pleaded guilty to avoid death penalty, took life without parole, testified against Bratva network spanning 3 continents. Vincent woke after 3 weeks, faced his reckoning with 20 years of documented crime, accepted 25 years in federal prison in exchange for testimony against his brother Lorenzo and the entire Castellano organization. Elena gave her statements, testified at preliminary hearings, told the truth about what happened that night, the good and the bad, the violence and the sacrifice, the impossible choices that somehow added up to survival. The media called her a hero. She didn't correct them. Let them have their narrative. The truth was more complicated and less satisfying and belonged to her alone. Ruby's Diner reopened in May, 5 months after the shooting. After crime scene investigators finished, after repairs and renovation, and the slow work of making a place whole again. New windows, bulletproof glass disguised as normal panes, new booths with memory foam that didn't hold old creases, new tiles covering the bloodstains that wouldn't wash out. But the coffee was the same. The menu was the same. The neon sign still buzzed with familiar rhythm. Elena owned 50% now. Vincent's gift, arranged through lawyers before sentencing. Payment for saving his life. Investment in a future he wouldn't see for 25 years. Harold worked the door, greeting customers, telling stories. The grandfather everyone needed at 3 in the morning when the world felt too big and too dark. Tommy ran the kitchen, head chef now. Professional training, arranged through veteran services, Elena connected him with. His hip-hop still played too loud, but his eggs were perfect, and his smile had returned. They'd hired 3 more staff, all veterans, all struggling with transition from military to civilian life, all needing a place that understood that some nights you can't sleep, and some memories don't fade, and some oaths don't expire just because the uniform comes off. Thursday morning, 3 a.m., Elena poured coffee for a young woman at the counter, mid-20s, short hair, Marine Corps tattoo on her forearm, the hollow look that comes from seeing too much and processing too little. "You serve?" Elena kept her voice casual, non-threatening, the tone that invites without demanding. "Camp Leatherneck, Afghanistan, 2023. Combat medic, just separated." The woman stared into her empty cup. "I don't know what to do with myself. Over there, I saved lives. Here, I'm just adrift." Elena poured coffee without looking, hands steady, muscle memory and peace combined. "I felt that way. For 13 years I felt that way. Thought I couldn't save anyone anymore. Thought the oath died when I took off the uniform." She gestured around the diner. "Then, one night, 30 men walked through that door and I remembered something important." "What?" "The oath doesn't care about uniforms or flags or official orders. It cares about showing up when someone needs help. It cares about fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. It cares about choosing service over safety, even when the odds are impossible." The young woman looked up, something shifting behind her eyes. Recognition. Connection. The moment when isolation cracks and lets light through. "You were there, the shooting. I read about it." She studied Elena's face. "They called you a hero." They were wrong. I was just someone who remembered her training and refused to walk away. Elena refilled the cup. "You're not adrift. You're just between missions. The next one will find you when it needs you. Until then, you show up. You stay ready. You keep the oath alive." "How?" "However works for you. I pour coffee and run a diner that opens its doors to people who need a safe place at 3 a.m. Harold greets strangers and makes them feel seen. Tom cooks food and plays terrible hip-hop and reminds us that joy exists even after trauma." Elena smiled. "Figure out what you're good at, then use it to help people who need it. That's the mission. That's always been the mission." The young woman nodded, took a sip, set the cup down with hands that shook less than they had 5 minutes ago. "Can I come back? Tomorrow night?" "Every night if you want. Coffee's on me until you figure out where you're going. Then you pay it forward to whoever comes after you." Outside, Boston was waking. Delivery trucks and early commuters and the slow brightening that comes before dawn. The world continuing its rotation despite everything that happened and everyone lost, and all the impossible choices that never quite add up to enough. Elena wiped down the counter. The routine grounding, meditative, the kind of motion that lets the mind rest while the body works. Harold was reading his paper. Same booth, same routine. The continuity of ritual healing in ways that therapy never quite reached. Tommy was singing in the kitchen. Different song, same enthusiasm. The resilience of youth mixed with the hard-won knowledge that darkness can be survived. Vincent was in federal prison 3 states away, serving his time. Writing letters Elena answered monthly. Maintaining connection across barriers of steel and time and guilt that wouldn't wash clean, but could perhaps be carried with grace. Sarah Chen was building her career, putting away criminals, honoring her father's sacrifice by making the world safer. She'd called twice since the hospital, just to check in, just to say thank you, just to remind Elena that survival wasn't failure. Kozlov was buried in Supermax, forgotten except by the families he'd destroyed and the agents who'd brought him down. Justice incomplete but sufficient. Jackson was still dead, would always be dead, but his memory lived here, in this diner, in Elena's steady hands and Harold's wisdom, and the coffee she poured for struggling veterans at 3 a.m. when they needed to remember their service mattered. A new customer entered, nervous, young. The body language of someone running from something, or toward something, or just running. Elena recognized the signs, had worn that look for 13 years. She picked up the coffee pot, walked over, poured without being asked. "First time at Ruby's?" The customer nodded, suspicious, wary, not ready to trust yet. "You're safe here. Whatever you're carrying, whatever you're running from, it can wait until after coffee." Elena set the pot down, slid the sugar and cream within reach. Nobody judges. Nobody asks questions you're not ready to answer. We just show up. We keep the doors open. We make sure nobody fights alone. The customer's shoulders dropped, tension bleeding out, the relief of finding sanctuary when you'd forgotten sanctuary still existed. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just pay it forward when it's your turn. That's how this works. That's how we keep the oath alive. 1 cup of coffee, 1 open door, 1 person at a time." Elena returned to the counter, refilled Harold's cup without him asking, checked on Tommy's eggs, watched early morning sun paint the diner in colors that made the repairs invisible and the memory almost bearable. This was the mission now. Not dramatic, not celebrated. Just showing up at 3 a.m. every Thursday and every other day when people needed a place that remembered them, that saw them, that kept the oath alive in small, steady ways that didn't make headlines, but save lives nonetheless. The dead don't carry guilt. The living do. But maybe that weight was fuel instead of burden. Maybe carrying them meant honoring them. Maybe survival was victory when you used it to protect those who came after. Maybe this was enough. This diner, these people, this quiet promise that nobody fights alone. Maybe the oath was always meant to be lived in small moments instead of grand gestures, in coffee poured steady, in doors left open, in wisdom shared across generations, in choosing to show up when showing up was the bravest thing you could do. Elena wiped the counter one more time, the motion, prayer, and purpose combined. Then she looked around Ruby's diner, her diner now, and felt something she hadn't felt since Fallujah. Not peace. Peace was too ambitious. But rightness. The sense that she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what mattered, keeping exactly the promises that defined her. The oath never expired, but neither did the permission to heal. And maybe that was the real victory. Not surviving the darkness, but choosing to carry light into it for whoever came after. 1 cup of coffee, 1 open door, 1 life at a time. Semper Fidelis, always faithful.